Hey, what's up, everybody? Andrew from Fantasy 8 here to give you my catcher rankings for the 2017 season. So excited to be back into these rankings, kicking it off with catcher, which obviously is probably the worst position in terms of fantasy, but let's see what we got to work with here. At number 1, Jonathon Lucroy. Yes, Buster Posey is not number 1 this year. Lucroy split time between the Brewers and Rangers last year. He had 13 homers in 95 games with the Brewers and 11 homers in 47 games with Texas. It put him at 24 home runs overall, which was the first time in his career he's gone over that. And I don't know how much stock you put into this kind of thing, but Lucroy is entering a contract year. Obviously how much that affects will vary depending on who you ask, but incentives matter, and there at least is some credence to contract years. Lucroy's doubles fell from 53 in 2014 to 20 in 2015 and 24 last year, so that's a little bit of a concern there, but easily playing with Texas, he's the number 1 catcher. And obviously at number 2, we have Buster Posey. He had a pretty disappointing 2016. That was the first time he'd posted a OPS below 821 since 2011. Obviously, with catcher being so shallow, it's not really a concern, but it did knock him down to 2 on the list. I think Posey will bounce back this year. I think his average will be closer to 300 with around 15 home runs. In the second half, he only hit 3 home runs last year, but his strikeout to walk ratio was great. He had 30 walks to 30 strikeouts in the second half. So no concerns there, but Buster Posey is down to number 2 on the list. And of course, at number 3, we have the young phenom Gary Sanchez. Took the league by storm when he got called up, made a case for a Rookie of the Year with all those home runs. And obviously, Sanchez's upside he could be an easy number 1 catcher by the end of the year, or he could be number 10. There's just so much risk involved with drafting him. I will not be drafting Sanchez. There's upside, but he's just going too high for, 4th round, and I don't want to take a catcher there, especially Sanchez. He didn't show the power in the minors, and that just makes me hesitate to pay up on him this year. Obviously, if he can hit 30-something home runs this year, I'll be completely fine with drafting him next year, but I want to give one more year before justifying that draft pick. At number 4, we have Evan Gattis, who had a very solid season last year, and I feel like a little bit under the radar. He had a decent average with 32 home runs with a .251 batting average, and I think he'll see the bulk of DH, with McCann probably being behind the plate, but obviously none of that's been talked about yet. Post All-Star break, Evan Gattis just went on a tear. He hit .288 with 19 homers and 219 at-bats, which gave him a .952 OPS in the second half. So he was a monster then, should get regular playing time, great power, and won't kill you in the average department. So that's why Gattis is at number 4. And then rounding out the top 5, we have Willson Contreras with the Cubs. Always have to double check his spelling because it's 2 L's instead of 1. But he had a solid rookie season last year. He had .282 with 12 homers. I debated putting Contreras ahead of Gattis, but Gattis just has more power potential, I think. But Contreras has pluses. Obviously, he's on one of the best offenses in the majors. And he wasn't really overpowered last year. He played pretty well, and if he can maintain that average and hit 15 to 20 home runs, he'll get enough counting stats in that lineup, which is why he's at number 5. Then number 6, we have J.T. Realmuto, who turned in a pretty solid season last year, especially looking at that average. He was a popular late-round pick at catcher. I drafted him a ton last year, and it definitely worked out. The power wasn't what I wanted, but he did have over 300 average and 12 stolen bases, and you can't really complain about that at the catcher position. But I'm not going to be drafting Realmuto this year, as he's just going far too early, generally around just outside the top 100 that I've seen. And I think the batting average is going to regress a little bit, and the stolen bases aren't enough to make up for it. So Realmuto is a guy I would avoid in drafts this year. Number 7, we have Yasmani Grandal with the Dodgers. The average is kind of low, but it masks what was actually a really standout season for Grandal last year. He went from 16 homers in 2015 to 27 with the Dodgers in 2016. He's not going to give you a batting average, but all his other stats will make up for it. There's so many catchers that hurt your average and don't only give you 10 to 15 home runs. Grandal, I think, can reach the 20-25 platform, so that's why he's at number 7 ahead of the next guy, Salvador Perez. He posted his second straight year of 20 or more home runs, but he also fell apart in the second half, as been his reputation. He had a putrid 605 OPS in the second half, batting .201 with 8 homers. At this point, he don't expect to be anything. He is who he is. He'll give you some homers, but he won't damage your average overall if you're in a Roto League. But, the second half thing is starting to become more and more frequent for him, so that's something to watch out with. Number 9, we have Russell Martin, who managed to maintain the power from last year, only falling 3 homers from 23 to 20, but he still hasn't managed to put up a decent average season besides that one-year aberration in Pittsburgh during 2014 season. Obviously, there's a lot of concerns about Toronto's lineup with Edwin Encarnacion gone, but Jose Bautista re-signed, and it's obviously not going to be what it was last year, but he should get you decent counting stats with 15 to 20-ish home runs, and that's kind of what you have to look for if you miss out on the top 5 in catcher, just a guy who will get you some home runs and give you a 230 to 250 average because, just catcher's that bad. Number 10, we have Tom Murphy, Colorado. He played very well in limited time last year. And obviously Nick Hundley's out of the picture, so Murphy has a pretty good shot of grabbing that starting role. He had a 282 average in 5 seasons in the minors and managed to crack the top 100 prospects list in 2016. Obviously, Colorado has a stacked lineup, and he showed a lot of power in the minors. So he definitely has more upside than the number 10 spot. So I think he's probably going to be one of my most popular catcher picks when I draft, just to see what happens with him in Colorado. At number 11, we have Welington Castillo, who signed a 1-year, $6 million deal with the Orioles after he was waived by Arizona for some reason, who would be replacing Wieters in Baltimore. It's a good move for him. He goes from one hitter's park to another, but obviously I think Orioles have a little bit better lineup. I think he could reach that 20-homer season this year, and he gives you a decent average for a catcher, so he's definitely a guy to look for to round out catcher there. Number 12, we have Brian McCann, who's just Mr. Solid when it comes to catcher. You know what you're going to get, a little bit below 250 average, but he's hit 20 or more home runs for 9 straight seasons between Atlanta and New York. It's not, as I said with Gattis, it's not exactly clear who'll be DHing more, but I think it will be Gattis, so it'll probably be McCann behind the plate. Well, messed up a little bit there, but now it's back in order. So at number 13 is Stephen Vogt. There was hope coming off his impressive 2015 season that he'd be able to build on the power, but he regressed to 14 homers in 2016 and just wasn't that impressive. The stats from last year, I think, are pretty good indicative of what he'll do this year. I don't think he'll reach 20 homers, and he plays in a pretty bad park with a poor offense, which really downgrades him draft-wise. Number 14, we have Cameron Rupp, who did pretty decently well as his first full season as a catcher in Philadelphia, and he was actually one of the guys I picked up in the first half to replace some injured catchers I had, and he was really good in the first half. He had a 287 average with 9 homers. But he had a 211 average with 7 homers in the second half, and if Rupp is closer to the second half than the first half, he's not going to be relevant in 14-team leagues. So he's at 14 right now, but he definitely needs to be much closer to that first half. Then number 15, we have Molina, who managed to bounce back last year. He rose his OPS quite a bit, 127 from a putrid 660 in 2015, and that's in large part due to the 307 average he was able to maintain this season. But he's entering his age 34 season, and the injuries are piling up. He's getting injuries there, especially his thumb, and he did really well in the second half. He hit 365, but I don't think he'll be this good in 2017. Just, 270-ish average and okay counting stats. So that's my list. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, it's at fantasy81. Or if you want to email me fantasy baseball questions, it's at fantasy81@gmail.com. For Fantasy 8, I'm Andrew. Thanks for watching.